Now, dating back to a few years ago, there was somebody that I know on social media, and I was just being nebby. I'm nebby. So if your profile is public, I'm going to click on it, whether I follow you or not. More so if I don't follow you and you're public, your profile is getting clicked on. But this is somebody that I knew, right? Somebody, we've been friends, done things together, went places, been around the same people. And I went to go click on his profile and it said no posts or something like that. Now, this is on my podcast Instagram. And I only have one Instagram now just to consolidate. But I used to have a personal Instagram that separated the podcast page from my personal page, close friends and stuff like that. So I knew this brother had posts, right? And I thought the only reason why it would say no posts when I know this person has posts recently is because you block someone. And I found that so weird. And I said, hey, Kayla, I'm married at this time. And I said, can you go on such and such's page and just to confirm I'm not bugging because, you don't have no reason to block Kayla. And she goes on his page. She's also blocked. She don't have nothing to do with the dude. And then we kind of had a chuckle about it. It's like, I guess if you're going to block one, you're going to block us both just to stay consistent. So, and I'm like, I wonder, and to this day, I've seen this person, didn't acknowledge it. You just act cool, pursue peace, whatever. The point is, although we have no beef, no malice, and I was blocked, none of that, you just realize some people don't like you. Some people may not be fond of you. Some people, and I'm somebody who has said in the past, you have no ops, you have no haters. And my point in saying all of that is to pretty much get over yourself. You're not that special. You're not that significant, no disrespect, to have a lot of haters. And if you do have a lot of quote unquote haters, you're probably the problem. So pretty much the point in that story, that anecdote, is you are not for everybody. And that's the title of this project that dîRttT and Jaz Evon has recently dropped. Now, this was a complete surprise to me. Hold on. Before we start talking about this, I gave my intro soliloquy. This is a special occasion. So this is a lot of liquor left. So we're not going to drink it all. But we're pulling out the Martell VSOP. Now, if y'all follow the Qool Hand Podcast, I am a firm believer in drinking Martell, not Hennessy. Hennessy is, I would say, the more popular brand out of the two. And I'm going to pour this up in the microphone so y'all can really hear this.
You're kind of supposed to tilt the glass.
This isn't wine.
Still?
Nah, it don't work like that. Shout out to Kayla, our executive producer for this episode. If you heard that voice talking about tilt the glass, that's not how it works. This is we're sipping out of a wine glass today because this is a special occasion. And this is how you know Martell is good. I remember talking to a sister and she was telling us about wine one time. And she said, if you swirl the wine around in the glass and it has something called stems, I'm not going to get into all that because that's not what we're here for. She said, that's how you know it's a good wine. This Martell, aged for around 3 to 5 years, VSOP has stems. We're not even supposed to be drinking it in this glass. That's how you know that it's good stuff. I'm going to leave it right there. Back to Jaz Evon and dîRttT. Shout out to Kayla, executive producer, keeping things right. We appreciate you. Qool Hand Podcast. Oh, man, that's good. All right. I sound like an alcoholic. Take the first sip. Talking about, oh, man. Okay. Anyway, good stuff. Jaz Evon and dîRttT recently dropped a 3-pack project, little EP called NFE, aka Not For Everybody. Now, this was an unexpected collaboration. Why is it an unexpected collaboration? For one thing, these are two people that have been featured on the Qool Hand Podcast, specifically Jaz Evon. And I talked to dîRttT on a couple of different occasions, and we've communicated many times via social media and through the text message, whatever. Now, Jaz Evon is most notably known for her classic short film and accompanying poetry book called Habits. And I talked about that on the podcast. You can check out those episodes. And she's known for her curation, her poetry. And dîRttT is a musician. He is not, although he does rap sometimes, he is not a rapper. You cannot put him in a box. There is no box that he fits in. There is no mold that you can make for dîRttT. He is his own entity. So when you have them together, when I saw this project announced, I'm like, what are we to expect? I'm expecting kind of the generic, okay, maybe some bars maybe from Jaz, but like more so poetry, or I don't know. So completely unexpected. And not to mention they live maybe a 4-hour, 5-hour flight away from each other. We have Jaz Evon down south in Texas, and you got dîRttT, who's over on the West Coast. So like I said, I'm sure I'm not the only person who felt that way, thinking that this was a surprise collab. They gave no clues leading up to it. Once the rollout started and didn't stop, that's when you knew these two people have been working together. Great job at not snitching on yourselves, ruining your own rollout, because another thing about a good project or a good release is the element of surprise. Like that's how like Beyonce became known for doing that, just dropping a project out the blue or announcing it a day before it drops. You don't get all sorts of clues. So you have the element of like, oh snap, this is happening, I gotta tune in. And that's the same thing with Jaz Evon and dîRttT on this project, NFE. Now, I want to talk about, before I get into the actual contents of the project, I want to talk about this artwork, because we're on some Marvel, Doctor Strange, multiverse type stuff with this project. Because on the artwork, you had Winston from ATL on the artwork. Mm-hmm. Now, the first time I heard of Winston was from Pizzo, when I was interviewing Pizzo over Zoom in around 2021. He was talking about how Winston is a friend of his and inspires him and does his thing. And then I actually got to meet Winston November 5th, 2022, when I went down to ATL for the Castier pop-up shop. So the layers to this surprise collab is ridiculous. And I would also have to mention, in giving credit to people, a Yumi. Now, Yumi is a friend of the podcast, man. And it's just good to see her name once again on something else. I don't get tired of saying these people's names, and I hope you don't get tired of hearing them. So Yumi did some of the graphics on the actual project, I believe, like the track list. And let's talk about the artwork. Let's get right into the artwork. So you have this artwork, and I'm going to have it on the screen here for everybody to see if you haven't listened to it yet. You have a woman, okay? You have what looks like a woman, I would assume would be Jaz. And then also in an artistic style that is exclusive to Winston. Now, I'm going to have to put Winston's Instagram in the description of this video so everybody could see it, because art is not I don't specialize in describing art. So what I would say about Winston's art is it has, Winston's art when you see Winston's art. So he did an excellent job with it. And you have somebody on there who looks like a woman, and you have somebody on there that might indicate being dîRttT. And if y'all know dîRttT, and if you don't know dîRttT, you're not about to find out, because he usually covers his face. So that's the one thing about the artwork that I have here, is it Jaz Evon in dirt on the cover, or is the unidentified object or person on the artwork something else? Now, I could have came up here and acted like I knew everything about the artwork and broke it down to amino acids. I'm just keeping it real. So, real talk. I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just come clean on the podcast and say I'm not completely sure. But that's the beautiful thing about interpretation. I also want to have a little disclaimer that everything that I'm going to say, I don't have any exclusive info or insider info on the meaning or the contents of some of the lyrics. These are my interpretations of the lyrics and everything. So, and even the artwork. So if you have any differing opinions or thoughts, please interact with me in the comments. And one thing I also want to mention with the artwork before we move on to the actual songs is if you're familiar with video games or anything, you would see like an E for everyone in the bottom right corner of like the physical video game, or a T for teen, or M for mature. Now for this one, and I like this, I believe this is Yumi's work. Because this was a part of like the graphic design of things and not the actual art that Winston did. I can be wrong. So there is an E at the bottom right corner of the artwork, and it's crossed out. And I love that in combination with the theme. It's on brand of not for everybody. So even the project itself may not be for everybody. Great job on that. So before we get into this project here, because we have 3 songs, this is an extremely short listen. I am looking at my podcast recording device. Now, before I edit everything, it says 14 minutes. The project in full is 7 minutes. So by this time, if you didn't listen to the project, you could have listened to it twice while I was on here rambling. So if you haven't listened to it, turn this off. Go ahead, check it out. It ain't going to cost you nothing but 7 minutes. And you probably lay in the bed for 7 minutes before you get up after your alarm went off in the morning. No disrespect. So you could, you know what I mean? Go ahead and give it a listen. Why would you watch the review, Kayla, and you didn't even...
I don't know. I don't get it.
Make it make sense.
It don't make sense. The math ain't mathing.
I don't know, man. If I was you, I would have listened to it. I don't know. But maybe the people that I know would have listened to it already. And I know some good people. So let me go ahead and take a sip because we're going to get into this review here. That's the real deal.
Goodbye.
That's the real deal. Holyfield. Real talk. So on More to Life, and I would be remiss to mention, not to mention rather, that I was sampled on this project twice. So I now have an ego, and because I have an ego and I'm feeling myself, I'm gonna talk about the 2 songs that
if you don't.
I'm gonna talk about the 2 songs that I was featured on. I also got writing credits too. So hit me up if you need some lyrics, if you need some bars. Pen bias, Himothy, Penathy.
Please. Somebody, please.
Oh, snap. I'm about to put like the handwriting emoji on my profile.
Goodness gracious me. Goodbye, Quentin.
Okay. I have an ego. So let's get into the actual review. Now, the first song here is called More to Life. And it starts out with a soundbite from one of the podcasts that I did called Friend or Phone Him. And in this podcast, I was talking about people, kind of what I mentioned in the beginning. You have zero ops. People don't care to not like you. Things like that. Pretty much get over yourself. And I was talking about more things in that podcast as well. Talking about how people who you don't know supporting you more than people you do know, and it's not that deep and things like that. So just for context, that's where the soundbite came from. I am very much honored to be a part of this project, to be on here twice out of 3 songs. But when I listen to it, it's like, I sound so stupid. When I listen to my own voice back, and especially on this intro, I'm over here stuttering. I'm over here, and we just talked about this on an episode. Kayla and I, how like you say things and it just turns out sounding the complete opposite of the way that you intended. So I am honored, but every time I hear it, I'm like, why'd you sound so slow? So anyway, so it starts out with the whole zero ops. You have zero haters, and the song begins. And this song was produced by Nole, who we actually see, there I go messing up my words, who I covered before on the podcast as well. So shout out to Nole, because the instrumentation or the instrumental, the beat that he produced, it reminds me of, if you are familiar with the album Yeezus by Kanye West, on the first song, On Sight, there's kind of a break between the actual beat, and then you hear like a little sampled beat. And for the people who know this song and know what I'm talking about, so it sounds like there's like on this project, it's like sampled like some kids from maybe a musical or something like that from maybe the 1940s, 50s, 60s. And the beat's great. And this song is about like a minute and a half long. And I describe this song as pretty much an appetizer. And I'm sure I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but the intro track to just about anything, whether it's an EP or an album, is so important because it can, in my opinion, make or break the listener's perception of what they're about to listen to. So for them to choose this song, because the sequencing is also important, they could have made these 3 songs, or maybe they made 4 or 5 or 6, and only these 3 made the cut. You still have to figure out in what order you want to put the songs. They could have had the title track first and then had the other 2 later, or just made it a different sequence. So for them to choose this song first, I thought was pretty good, because the sample is great by Nole, and what they're saying is kind of like it's kind of like laid back. You don't have to think too much or too deep or too hard about what they're actually saying. So you have the words from Jazz. She's saying, every waking moment you leave by my side, I've been losing all my mind. So you I feel like they're dropping hints to what is yet to come later in the project. And dîRttT says, I've been losing friends every minute, and they always talk when you winning. So you have 2 different sides. Every waking moment you leave by my side, I've been losing all my mind. And then you have dîRttT talking about something else. There's 2 different things that they're talking about that contribute to the same subject of not being for everybody. We're going to talk about that later. So hang on to that thought, and we're going to get back to it. So another thing that's also uttered in this, at the end of this song, I believe it's dîRttT singing, there's more to life than me and you. And as I mentioned before, all of these things are like dropping little hints into what's to come. So I had some thoughts that I'm going to reserve for later, but the main thing that I got from this as we wrap this song up, you can look at things twofold, with relationships or situations being bigger than me and you, or maybe in Jaz Evon's case, putting too much stock into people with like a question mark. That's my note here. So that's the first song. The next song that we have here is called Still Breathing. And the theme that I had for this song was tell us about yourself, because in Still Breathing, we had the let's go back to the last song as being an appetizer, a teaser. But this song, Still Breathing, we get a little bit more of what Jaz Evon and dîRttT are as human beings, or the state that they're in a particular time. So both dîRttT and Jaz are rapping. And I'm gonna take my sunglasses off for this one, because you don't hear my voice until the end. And it's very insignificant. I'm not as important on this song, so I'm gonna put my ego to the side here. My sunglasses fell, and I think that is a metaphor for pride. What's it called? What comes before the fall?
Pride comes before a fall.
Pride comes before the fall. And I hope my glasses didn't break. We're going to find out later. I've been humbled. So So anyway, both Jaz and dîRttT are rapping, and this is what like exclamation points, big exclamation points for this one. So dîRttT is rapping first, right? And he seemed to be talking about romance. And he's dropping some bars, and this is a review. This is a summary. So we're not going to break down all the bars here, but dîRttT's really, he's talking like romance, but he's dropping a lot of R&B bars, something we got to deal with. He's talking about, I don't got juice like High C, but I can sing to you like Casey. And he said, even before that, he said, I want to talk to you like Jodeci. So he's all, he's a youngin'. I believe he's young, early 20s, but he's up on game with the Jodeci. That's a smart move, young man. Mm-hmm. Then he even talks about it to me and you like Cassie. I'm like, what you know about you don't know nothing about no Cassie. Mm-hmm. So that was for me personally, because I don't hear nobody talking about no Cassie. Honestly, I don't hear no Cassie references in songs. So I just thought, like, just as a side, it's not even supposed to be like the hottest bars in the world. I wouldn't think he was like, oh yeah, they're going to lose their mind to this one. But more so for me, somebody like me, it's just nice to hear somebody like Cassie's name. Like, okay, so nobody forgot about Cassie. Okay, I'm with you. So I like that. So dîRttT seems to be talking about a romantic interest while telling him about himself. But at the same time, while doing that, he also talks about ghosting people at the end of his verse and cutting people off. And then, in typical rapper fashion, you have to, throw some jabs, or not throw some jabs, but differentiate yourself from the other rappers. Like, you don't do this stuff that the other rappers do. So boom, you have that. And then Jaz talks about being too nice, or being this and that. But above everything, that may seem passive or in a sense negative, she's real. She also mentions things like she's low key, has trauma, but also has a classy appeal. So I feel like this is a vulnerable approach that she's taken, and it's nice that she's able to do this through art. Jaz is somebody who's like, she's not on Instagram, and I don't know her personally. Like we ain't never kicked it. We ain't never hang out. Maybe in the future we can. Maybe we could, go down Texas. Plane tickets like $400 a pop.
Rough.
$400 a pop. Now don't get the game confused. Now I know you see the microphone. I'm popping out with a VSOP. You know what I mean? The Qool Hand Podcast don't got no money. Mm-hmm. I ain't rich. So maybe in the future, sometime in the future, we can go down and visit Jaz Evon, because I done pulled up on a couple people that I've met through the podcast. But we'll make it happen one day. But anyway, my point in saying all of that before I sidetracked myself was, to me, the perception that I get that she shows to people through social media, and that's pretty much the extent that I get of her, in a sense, exposing herself and her personality. She doesn't seem like she's the most all up in your face, this is who I am, and I'm just going to tell you everything about myself within the first hour of meeting you and clicking up and talking with you. More so, she's able to really get her feelings out and how she feels about a situation in herself in a creative outlet. For example, the poetry book, extremely vulnerable. Another example, this music stuff that she's now doing. So I spent a little bit more time on talking about Jaz Evon's verse because I respect the output. Put it that way. I respect the outlet that she's using to say things, because it's not easy to talk about personal things a lot. You may not be comfortable having a conversation with somebody about one subject or one topic, or especially or in particularly talking about yourself, Mm-hmm. So I respect. All right. So overall, this was a smooth track, a chill track. There was also a nice, I I think it was a sample because a singer was not credited as a feature on this track. So there was a nice background vocals, which I think was a sample. I love the contrast between styles. I'm glad I wrote this down.
Yeah.
Contrast between styles and flows.
Yeah.
Because Jaz and dîRttT, as mentioned before, and as it's going to be mentioned in the next song, are from two different areas. There's two different cultures. You have Texas, you have LA. You have, as R.I.P. Pimp C, as he said, you know, Texas is the South. I remember he was on the radio talking about Atlanta's not the South. He said, when I go to Atlanta, I got to change my clock. So he was just, because they're on Central Time. Yeah, Texas is on Central Time. And I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. So anyway, Jaz Evon's from the South, as Pimp C would say. She's from the South. And you can clearly hear it in her, inflection, her tone. And they, like I said, two different flows, and they both bring something to the table. So although there's a contrast, with it together creates something beautiful.
Oh my goodness.
I did not practice that. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on the track. Now lastly, we have the title track, which is called NFE, Not For Everybody. And this features somebody called Providence. So this song, Not For Everybody, summarizes the theme of the project while confirming some of the things that were alluded to in the first song. It's everything in one. And from a sound standpoint, you have, once again, the contrast that comes together with the West Coast and the down South artists coming together. But dîRttT starts out with more of like a 2020 decade vibe, because he has pitched up vocals and he's saying, I'm not for everybody. No, I'm not for everybody. No, I'm not for everybody. And that's like a modern thing. And then you eventually have Jaz Evon. But before I get to Jaz Evon, the song starts out with dîRttT, as I was saying, with the melodic I ain't for everybody. And then he elaborates on haters. You haters acting like fans for real. Woo, woo, woo. And then all of a sudden, the song takes a sicko mode turn on a chopped and screwed tit. And this is the thing. The contrast, once again, the contrast. And I love how this song came together and how they were able to put their brains together and make this thing move in one motion, if that makes sense. So things start to get slowed down. Houston, Texas type stuff. Chopped and Screwed, DJ Screw, SUC, Paul Wall, R.I.P. Big Pokey, all of that stuff. And you hear like, you know, not everybody's going to like you, not everybody's going to feel you, something like that. And it sounds like dîRttT said that in the Chopped and Screwed sound. You hear like a chant, you know, Texas to L.A., West Coast to the South. Best stay in your place. Keep my name out your mouth. Yeah. So
it's like that.
So you get that. And then you have Jaz's verse. Before Jaz comes on, you have like everything's taken a turn. And once again, on the production side, there is like a Texas swang with the production, like the wow, 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 wow. And this is the thing about you needing to listen to the project, because me doing this wow, wow probably don't sound like nothing to somebody who doesn't know what I'm talking about. So you knew what I was talking about.
I did, in fact.
Exactly. And you want to know why?
Because I listened to the project.
Because she listened to the project. That's right. See, I sidetracked myself. Providence. Beautiful job. This young lady has a great voice, and she is singing, not for everybody, no, not for everybody, no. Oh, see, she had me thinking.
Vocal.
She had me thinking I could sing. Shout out to Providence, because I don't want to just kind of brush over her contribution. So whoever you are, Providence, you did a great job. This young lady had had a great contribution. And I think because this song is such a standout song between the modern sound and the Texas to LA connection, her hook, her contribution, her vocals are something, or one of the biggest, it's a flagship item. It is a flagship item. It stands out, and it's something that people can recognize the song for. If it's not for one reason, if it's not for any reason, it's going to be for her vocals. So, you know, the hook is important. That's another thing. The hook is something that keeps people coming back. They may not like anything else on the song, but they may just keep coming back just to hear those vocals. So shout out to Providence. So Jaz Evon, this is a powerful verse. So she's rapping once again. She said, she talks about taking accountability for maybe past actions. It's like a self-analysis on this verse. She talked about, she thought there was a connection with someone when it was really just a one-sided attachment. Now, I have in parentheses in my notes here on whose side. Was it a one-sided attachment on her end where she was connected to someone, or a vice versa? But what's exposed here, because I wanted to be fair, I didn't want to assume that, oh, Shorty got attached to somebody who really wasn't feeling her like that. But you know what? It seems like that was the case, with all due respect. So she said, it becomes apparent to me that she was talking about herself being connected to someone else. She was the one who had the one-sided attachment when the other person really didn't reciprocate the same feelings and or actions when she talks about a text that was left on read. And that's a messed up feeling. That's a messed up feeling when you know someone, you know, people who have read receipts on have a great power. When you can see that somebody's seen your text or read your text and they do not respond. And my thing is, there's people who are important, who have a lot of things to do, not important, but the important people in their lives, will receive a text back. I got a homie I ain't hit back in a couple days, and I don't forget about it. No matter how busy I get, I'm like, I got to hit my dog back. He's on my mind, and it's going to bother me until I hit him back. So even if you're busy, even if you have stuff going on, you're going to hit that person back if you think it's worth it and if you care about them. That's just real talk. So, and when you realize you're not going to get that text back, when you realize your communication may not be as important to that other person, that hurts, man. That hurts. So there, like I said, self-analysis on this track, and it's hard to admit these things. It's hard to say I was attached to somebody, but they didn't feel the same way about me. That's heavy stuff. So there was one more thing that I'm going to say about her verse. She says something that like talks about maybe like she was being gaslit. Yeah, that's something that I got at the end of her verse, and that ends up making her question, what am I holding on to? You got to let blood go. Let him go. Because he might have already let you go mentally. Let that fool go. And if you got a problem with it, we could get down.
Oh my gosh.
If Kayla wasn't in here, if she wasn't my producer today, I wouldn't be doing all this extra stuff.
Acting a fool.
I wouldn't be doing that for real. I'm just having fun at this point. So, and the song ends with a poem. And this is another thing. This is another thing in this little multiverse that I'm talking about, because you get things like you're like crossing over worlds here with dîRttT doing the spoken word poem. And in his poem,
I'm so sorry.
I thought you were the producer.
I am so sorry. That is so ghetto. Wow. Fire me now. I'm fired. I'm sorry. I'm fired.
Yeah, she's out. She's out.
That is so ghetto. I'm so sorry.
I'm trying to think what to dock. But you're doing this for free.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man. You can't get good help these days.
All right.
Oh
my
man,
bad.
that's
I bet.
I gotta take back some of your shroot bucks. So anyway.
What?
So dîRttT was doing a spoken word poem, and in his poem, it seems like he's like talking to a romantic interest, but at the same time, and I only get that feeling from the end of it when he says specific things, but more so he starts off his poem with talking about taking accountability as well. Now, dîRttT talks about there's a point where a boy becomes a man. And he says this, I'm just going to read some of this to show you how powerful this is, because I couldn't really come up with the proper words to give this justice. You know, there's a certain point where every boy got to become a man, take credit for his actions at hand, whether it's present, future, or past, no matter how hurtful, even when the words feel like a sword, even if the excuse is that you're bored. Don't be complacent when her love adjacent. Say we were both born with love, but somehow she ended up with Jason. The day was Friday the 13th when I was 13. Hopped behind the wheel, the pedals ain't reach my feet. Now, I started talking like I was Cassidy for a minute because he's doing his poetry, but at the same time, don't forget the bars that he's dropping within the poetry. Said we were born with love. Jason Bourne? Oh, okay. You didn't catch that.
I did.
I can see it on your face. Nah.
Yes, I did. Don't do me. Don't do me. Don't even do me.
She ain't catch it. Shout out to dîRttT. The day was Friday the 13th. So you went from Jason Bourne to Jason, what's his name, Voorhees or something like that on the Friday the 13th joint. My point is he was dropping bars within this this beautiful poem, but had fantastic ideas even when I was 4, back when daddy told me to pick up a switch and not a chord. Even then, I knew it came from love, straight from the core. But darling, I write the letter with hopes that you can adore me. So I feel like at the end of this, like when everything's said and done, it was kind of a reflective poem on dîRttT's end, talking about his past, talking about the things that make you a man, that or contribute to your manhood or to the adult that he's become. Overall, and we kind of got off track. We were all over the place at the end of this one, just having fun with it. But overall, I think this was a great project. And the thing is, it's so short that it leaves you wanting more. But at the end of the day, for me personally, I want to go out like Jordan. I'd rather you say that things ended too soon and leave you wanting more than doing too much and then you get the opposite effect, like, okay, I got bored on this one. It's just enough, and it's just enough for the project to be great, and it's just enough for me to review it. So Jaz Evon, dîRttT, shout out to the people who engineered, mixed, and mastered everything. I don't have everybody's name, so I'm not going to say the engineers, but I want you to know that I appreciate the work that you do, because I know that there's a lot that goes into that as well. So awesome project. Please check it out. NFE, not for everybody. This is the Qool Hand Podcast, something you got to deal with. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and if you made it this far through all of I'm going to say my shenanigans, not Kayla's, my shenanigans, thank you very much. Go check it out. It's out on all platforms. NFE, not for everybody. This is the Qool Hand Podcast, something you got to deal with. Kayla, thank you for being on the show and keeping things running smoothly. And I'll see y'all next time.